Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Alpharetta City Council for August 26, 2024. Go ahead and call this meeting to order and note for the record that all members of council are present and accounted for. And as always, we begin our meetings with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you're willing and able, please stand and join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And this evening, our agenda will begin with proclamation of Payroll Week. Director Harris, City Finance Director, if you and any other members of your organization would like to come forward, please do.
That's good. We look forward to this day.
It's never a good thing when I hand you a microphone. Please, Director Harris.
I'm Director of Finance, and I wanted to take this opportunity to recognize Mark Bennett, who heads up our payroll and benefits division in finance. Yeah, it's all fun and games until your payroll check doesn't show up. So there's just a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, a lot more than most people realize, and we process 550 to 600 paychecks or direct deposits every other week, with including our full-times and then our seasonal and some of the part-time. And that entails about 170 pay codes that people work, depending on where they're working at a special event, or whether it's overtime, whether they're hourly or an exempt employee. So there's a lot of work, and Mark's team does a great job, and we're very happy he's here.
So are our employees. Yes. So, Councilman Brady? Okay. So it's any of you know, the lifeblood of any organization is the payroll department, because most people don't come here to volunteer, although many do dedicate their time to this community. So I'll go ahead and read this proclamation by the mayor and the council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, for National Payroll Week, September 2 through 6th, 2024. September 26th, there's a dash in there. So, whereas nearly 150 million people work in the United States, and over 485 of those work for the city of Alpharetta, National Payroll Week pays tribute to our payroll professionals who support all of us by paying wages, reporting worker earnings, and withholding federal employment taxes. And whereas payroll professionals in the city of Alpharetta play a key role in maintaining the economic health of Alpharetta, carrying out necessary and diverse tasks like paying into the unemployment insurance system, providing information for child support enforcement, and carrying out tax withholding, reporting, and depositing. And whereas payroll departments collectively spend more than $2.4 trillion annually, all while complying with a myriad of federal and state wage and tax laws, and whereas payroll professionals are proactive in educating both the business community and individual employees about the payroll tax withholding systems. Now, therefore, we, the mayor, and the city council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia, do hereby proclaim the week of September 26 as National Payroll Week, and appreciate the efforts of the payroll professionals who work in the city of Alpharetta. So proclaimed the 26th day of August, 2024, by the mayor and city council of the city of Alpharetta, Georgia. So I will pass this along to you and your department. Was there anything you'd like to say? Fair enough. I just wanted to give you the opportunity. But we do appreciate what you and all your fellow employees do in the payroll department. Thank you. So next item up on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda, and that is the special called City Council meeting minutes from the meeting minutes of August 19th, 2024. Is there anyone from council that would like to remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing none. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards on this item?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and speak on the consent agenda, now is your chance. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Motion to approve. Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Hypes and a second by Councilman Mitchell. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve as outlined by Councilman Hypes, please vote yes, otherwise vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So the next item up will be a work session item. So that means there will be no votes on this. This is simply for public discussion and public information. And that item is the short-term rental discussion. Ms. Eswine, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is just bringing back to you the short-term rental, both UDC revisions and ordinance revisions. The presentation is largely unchanged, but just to give you an overview again, staff has identified roughly 89 short-term rentals in the city, and that's limited based on the type of data we were able to compile, so there could be more, but that's from searching what we've identified thus far, and this map kind of shows the concentrated areas of that. So to remind you, the prior proposal that was brought to you in the fall of last year included the two-pronged approach, both the Unified Development Code land use regulations as well as the ordinance for permitting and licensing purposes. So what was originally proposed as a starting point was to require it as a conditional use only in the agricultural district, which would significantly limit where it would be allowed in the city. And there was CUP criteria outlaid for council consideration upon receipt of an application for a CUP. And this, again, was paired with that permitting ordinance. So following the presentation in the fall, we had our stakeholder meeting, and feedback was provided by both individuals in the city who operate short-term rentals as well as individuals who are maybe leery of it, worried about how it will affect them, people who are just residents living in the city not operating a short-term rental. The feedback regarding the operational requirements, that licensing ordinance, were generally pretty consistent with what has been included in the draft ordinance that you've seen thus far and that I'll go over later tonight if you want. The concerns that were raised were in limiting the number of short-term rentals to keep the character of neighborhoods residential so that people know their neighbors dogs, and things like that, as well as what kind of zonings it would be. They expressed maybe some narrowed zonings for where it could be operated, not necessarily just the ag though. And so in talking with Kathy, we came up with the proposal that you heard a couple of weeks ago, which is to authorize short-term rentals in any residential district in the city rather than just agricultural, but to limit it to 5% of any units within a platted subdivision. So trying to limit the concentration of short-term rentals in specific areas in the city so that they don't all end up in one subdivision. So setting that 5% rental cap and then keeping that licensing ordinance, which would allow for an annual license to be issued, keeping contact information current, providing regulation and possible code enforcement for violations, rather than strictly having something that would give somebody a grandfathered right to run with the land without any regulatory framework. So specifically, we've got this definition for short-term rental. It's anything essentially that's for less than 30 days without capturing anything else like a hotel or a bed and breakfast. So the UDC would be revised again to make short-term rentals permitted under any residential district in the city, capping the number for any platted subdivisions at 5%. And we had that as one short-term rental at minimum per platted subdivision. So even if that was more than 5%, you would at least get one per platted subdivision or 5% of the total number of units, whichever is greater. And there would be an opportunity for an individual who wanted to seek a short-term rental, but that would exceed that cap, to come to the city council to request a variance to that number. So if they're in a subdivision that's already at the 5% cap and they want to do it, they could ask for a variance to that to allow them to seek that. There are approximately 295 properties classified in residential that are not in a subdivision of record right now, so that 5% cap that we're talking about would not apply to those properties. So you could, if every single residential property in the city that wasn't in a platted subdivision wanted to have a short-term rental, there would be 295 of them. And staff has already gone through and identified, based on the first number that I showed you, how many short-term rentals are in each subdivision. And there are several that have exceeded that 5% cap already. That would be something that we would have to look at on a case-by-case basis. If the council were to adopt this, to see, well, do they have vested rights? Are they grandfathered in any way? To determine whether or not they would be legally, as a matter of right, allowed to continue operating, notwithstanding that. And that's something that Kathy and I have talked about, but it's not necessary to include in the UDC, but I did want to at least bring it to your attention. So I think at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Kathy, because she actually had this meeting, but following the last work session, she met with some representatives from the Windward HOA, and they provided additional feedback, which has prompted us to make a few tweaks to the recommendation. So,
thank you. So just to recap, the number of short-term rentals that we've identified is 89, 339 platted subdivisions in the city. And we had some questions at the last meeting about how many short-term rentals did we find that were not within a platted subdivision. So we did find 3. We only found 3 of the 89 that were identified for short-term rental. Again, 295 parcels, so only 3 of those that are not within a subdivision. Also had the opportunity to meet with the Windward Board, and I had a couple of comments from them. One of the big comments was, couldn't we increase the fees, the violations? I think the last proposal, we had 250 for a violation, so they asked that could be increased. One of them had mentioned that, I think for a tree violation, it's up to $1,000. So they did ask us to look at increasing the fees. I also had a request that we prohibit adjacent short-term rentals. And if you think about how Windward is set up with the different platted subdivisions, you could have 5 or 6 homes that are the homes within a platted development that may be lining the lake. So they wanted to make sure that it wasn't concentrated, and that if you did have a short-term rental, that they weren't adjacent to each other. They also asked us to look at, if we didn't have the non-adjacency requirement, that we look at a minimum distance. But to us, and to regulate any type of an ordinance that we put in place, it's going to be easier, for staff to identify if it's adjacent. So I think that that's the better route, instead of establishing distance requirements. And we did have one board member that asked, why could all short-term rentals, why couldn't they just be located within a commercial zoning district and not allow them at all? But most of the comments that I heard were just how to strengthen what we were proposing and bringing to council with the violations, as well as requiring that they could not be adjacent to each other. So those are the comments I had. Welcome any questions that you may have.
Do we have any questions for Director Cook? Councilman Will.
Kathy, can you pull the map of the short-term rentals back up? And how many of those are in Windward?
Well, there's only one that's shown in Windward, but since we've started this process, somebody within Windward sent me a different website, and there's multiple. So we are finding more. We haven't really purchased this service that will be ongoing, that will help us find some of the short-term rentals to make sure that they are in compliance and they do receive their license. But a lot of the short-term rentals that we're finding in Windward, they're for one room or a basement, which by our code is already not permitted. So we've already started that process of identifying those addresses and sending them notice to cease and desist, because you cannot lease out just a room within your house as a short-term rental. So that may be why they weren't showing up. There's some that are identified on the different vacation websites, but they're for individual rooms versus the whole structure.
And do the HOAs have the ability to do this on their own?
They do. And I did remind them that they could also put it in their covenants not to allow them at all.
And the reason they're not doing it?
They didn't tell me if they're going to proceed with that. They're probably going to see what we pass, and then maybe they go back to their residents, and maybe it's part of a vote as to whether you change the covenants. I'm not sure.
So are they essentially asking us to do something they could do on their own, but?
No, I don't think they were asking us to do anything. My point of reaching out to them is since it's such, a large, there's so many of the platted subdivisions are within Windward, I wanted to get feedback as to what they thought about what we were proposing in
And
general.
that
Whether
applies to every platted subdivision. They can all do this on their own, right?
within their covenants, they can
Yeah.
establish that they don't even allow a short-term rental.
And how many actual, in these meetings, how many people are showing up to complain about short-term rentals?
I believe at the meeting last year, we had over 70 people.
Okay,
And we do get a lot of inquiries regularly from the public.
okay, thank you.
Councilman Hypes.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Cook, one of my questions is about administration, time commitment, and cost by the city. Can just to identify where these are and whether or not there's any degree of accuracy where the short-term rentals are, and then monitoring who has 5%, one, when somebody relinquishes one and there's a waiting list and who decides who's on the waiting list, is that going to put a burden on our resources?
No, I don't think so. In fact, it only took probably 2 hours to put together this map that showed all of the locations within the city. So once we have a base map, it's not that hard to go in each time we get a request and make sure that it meets the 5%, because we do have a planner that is, her focus is GIS, so it's very easy for her to be able to identify if it's maxed the 5%.
So I recall the meeting with the public a year or so ago. I think Councilman Dorito might have been there as well, and very evenly split, very vocal input. And I do recall one of the concerns by the residents who were somewhat wary about short-term rentals was when they turned into party houses.
Right.
And I see under operational requirements, overnight occupancy is 2 persons per bedroom plus 2 additional persons. So I think that's clear as mud, but would that mean if there's a 4-bedroom house, you could legally have 8 people in the house overnight?
That's right.
2 per bedroom and then 2 more for each bedroom?
No. It's 2 people per bedroom plus 2 additional. So if you have a 4-bedroom house, that's 8 people, plus 2 additional would be 10. And I can clarify that if you'd like. That's very common calculations for these.
I'm sure this wouldn't be the ordinance language, but the way it's presented here in the PowerPoint,
Right.
I could see it being interpreted both ways.
Right, no, and that's a fair point, but it's intended to be, say you have a bedroom that has more than 1 bed in it or something like that, just to give a little bit more flexibility, but no, it wouldn't be 4 people per bedroom.
And then it goes on in terms of party houses, and I'm sensitive to our residents who don't want to be next to a party house. It says daytime occupancy shall not exceed overnight occupancy plus 4 guests. So in the 4-bedroom scenario, we've got 10 people overnight, and then legal occupancy in somebody's house for the day would be 14. And I guess if it's a 4-bedroom house, you could have 4 cars in the driveway. So how do we feel about that in light of what some of the input was from the residents about something that I was sensitive to their feelings about, because I don't want to be next door to a frat party.
Right, and most of the comments we had last year is they just didn't want it to take over the neighborhood.
Right.
A lot of the comments they were okay as long as it wasn't the majority of the neighborhood. So we can certainly look at limiting that more. I don't know if our city attorney is aware of other ordinances that may be stricter, that we can look at reducing that number.
I would be open, since this is a work session, for a lower number of bedrooms. Well, no, I mean, I think it would just be a max per bedroom.
Right.
And the daytime occupancy, again, that's saying, hey, gang, I'm renting a house, why don't you come on over here, and it hits social media, then all of a sudden you've got a good Super Bowl party happening. So, but those are some of the things,
Yeah.
taking into account what I heard, that I'd like us to try to be in front of the curve on this as we're drafting language. And
Yeah, those are the good comments, because even though we have the noise ordinance, and they could be called if there is a noise issue, there's other issues besides just noise, with trips coming and going if you have a lot of people at that residence.
Any other questions? Councilman Dorito?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Kathy and Ms. Eswiner. So thank James. I know he's been very involved with this for quite a number of months now. Appreciate all your efforts. The Wynwood, when you met with the Wynwood Board, the recommendations that the board has made to you that you presented earlier, was that if we decide to move forward in passing an ordinance on managing short-term rentals in the city, or would they prefer not having short-term rentals at all?
They didn't really answer that question. I had one board member that said they thought that the short-term rentals should be considered a hotel and only allowed within a commercial zoning. The majority of the comments were just to strengthen what we were putting forth.
The 5% cap within platted subdivisions, and you pointed out one issue at Wynwood earlier where they almost have like, subdivisions within subdivisions type
Right.
of thing. So I would think we'd want to address that so that we don't end up allowing a lot more short-term rentals in the Wynwood community because of that situation, and have it somewhat, limited if the council decides to move forward with this. The question I have also is, within most of the newer subdivisions in the city, probably a lot of them, when the city approved the site plans and stuff, there was a 10% requirement for, you couldn't have more than 10% rentals in the community, just ordinary rentals of townhouses or single-family homes. I'll take my subdivision. We have both townhouses and single-family homes. I'm assuming the townhouses and single-family homes would be considered within the number of units, the 5% cap, right?
If the short-term rentals would be part of that 10% cap, yes.
So the townhouses and single families would be included in the number of homes in that subdivision plat for that 5% cap to apply. Because we have two separate boards in our subdivision.
Right.
We have a townhouse board and we have a master board. And so I just want to make sure that
I think that would be for the covenants, and the HOA would have to regulate that, because we actually do not regulate the max 10% of rentals within a
I'm talking about
development.
the 5% cap, if it was to
Right.
go forward with the
We
city.
will regulate the max 5%.
You would include the townhouses, single family, in the total number of homes where the 5% cap would apply?
The city will only look at it as the max 5 for short-term rentals. We will not look at how
On all
many other
homes in that platted
homes
subdivision?
are rented,
Okay.
how many other homes.
So one of the things I'm concerned about is, the 10% cap in the covenants is, generally speaking, across the city. I would want to make sure that if the city moved forward in doing this, that 5% was included in that 10%. So there's always, no matter what, rentals plus short-term rentals would be capped at 10%. Because I'm going to tell you why I have a concern about that. If you're not clear in any ordinance we pass on this, you might end up having basically 15% of the community become rental units, right? And I know in my house down in Florida, it's a fairly new subdivision, and we're having issues with rentals because they don't have caps down there. But the problem with it is there's no, at least in this subdivision I'm talking about, there's no requirement to make sure that whoever's renting the property, whether it be short-term or long-term, that they read the covenances, that they sign off that they're going to abide by the covenances. And so I would want some, language in the ordinance that would basically require the owner of the property, if they're going to do a short-term rental, that they get sign off by whoever they're renting it to, that they're going to live within the covenances of the subdivision that they're in, whether it be, parking requirements, maybe access to amenities, noise issues, that sort of thing. Whatever covenances within each subdivision, build for themselves. So I just throw that out as food for thought of maybe having some language clarification around that.
Sure.
The other concern I have is, policing of this. It's great to pass a law that puts some sort of guidelines or guide rails around short-term rentals, but I want to make sure if we're going to do that, that we have some mechanism established in place to make sure we police that, identify the current short-term rentals, make sure they get licenses, make sure that they meet all the safety requirements to rent their home short-term. And similar to what we do with hotels, there's a lot of requirements around that for short-term, rooms and stuff. So I just point that out as something to consider whenever you bring it forth to us
Sure.
for consideration. The 295 residences that are outside subdivision plats, do you have any thoughts on that, on how we would handle short-term rentals in those homes?
The only thing that I could propose is that if they're not within a platted subdivision, that they would have to go through a conditional use process. Because the 5% will not work for those 295 outside of a platted subdivision, because they could all be concentrated in one area. And the 3 that we did find were close to downtown. So it's very difficult to try to apply the 5% if it's a lot that's not within a platted subdivision. And we didn't see a big issue. There could be issues in the future, but right now we saw that there was only 3 of the 89.
Yeah, I'm trying to solve for the future. I want to
Sure.
make sure this applies to
And we
future
could.
expansion.
We could add that it's a conditional use if you're
And we
not
can
within
do
a
it in a
platted.
sense, and this is more for Ms. Eswine's ears. I'm not asking for a reaction yet, because you probably have to look at this, but how do we make sure it's equitably applied to all homeowners in the city and not have, an easier process for the platted subdivisions versus these 295 homes? So I'd want to make sure we had some equal level playing field for people to be treated equally. So, thank you.
And there will be some requirements that they have to provide information that their homeowners association allows the short-term rental. So that's where we would need to capture if there's already a maximum 10%, because this will be a different service that we're using that's going to only capture the short-term rentals. And because rentals can change so much, if you're renting your entire house or somebody moves and they're renting the entire house, it would be difficult for us to capture that number. So we would have to depend on the HOA to give us the approval also, if there is an HOA.
Do we have any other questions for Ms. Eswine or Kathy Cook?
Could I get James to put the PowerPoint back up? I don't know that we showed the very last of the UDC recommendations clearly. So this, following Kathy's meeting with Windward, this is what Kathy and I discussed and met about. And so to address the per phase issue so that you don't have one phase with the concentration of all of the 5%, we had suggested having a cap of 5% per platted phase. So not just per whole subdivision, but each phase, so that it would more equitably split them out within a subdivision. Prohibit short-term rentals, as Kathy mentioned, from being located immediately adjacent to another short-term rental, which is more enforceable than a distance requirement. So just saying that they can't be immediately next to each other. If code enforcement got a complaint, or if they got multiple applications, they would be able to just pull GIS, look it up, and not have to worry about measuring or getting a survey completed or anything like that. And then, as Kathy already mentioned, and I don't know that we would even have to put this in the ordinance, but prohibiting a rental of any portion of a home rather than the whole thing. So I think Kathy had already addressed it, but I wanted you to see it just to make it clear that it was part of it.
Good. Do we have any other questions for staff?
So I can go through the licensing ordinance, or if y'all want to give direction on the land use first, I'm happy either way.
Kathy, how would you like us to proceed?
I think we have a path forward. We have the land use part. I think that in general, the council seems to be in agreement, so we can work on the licensing requirements.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Lagerbloom, are you comfortable? You have clear enough direction to bring something forward?
I think I am. So we're saying, Kathy, that we want to work on these licensing. We want to work on that outside of this work session, and you've got what you need for tonight?
I do.
Okay. Okay, we're good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Will had one more comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this one more time, and it's the reason I object to this ordinance. And it seems very much like we are creating an ordinance for a problem that doesn't exist. And particularly when you take into mind that the HOAs can do this on their own. And so what's happened is we have HOAs who can't get enough votes to pass something. And so their answer to that is to come to the city and have the city force it on the subdivision and on the residents that live there. If it was important enough inside the subdivision, then the residents in the subdivision could handle this. It doesn't require a city ordinance to do it. Secondarily, who is going to monitor all this? So we're creating an entire bureaucracy to monitor something that we almost effectively can't monitor. So, and I would even get into the fact that even if 30 or 40 people showed up, you're talking about 0.0005% of the people want us to pass an ordinance for a problem that doesn't really exist. And if we're saying we're going to do it because of the future, and we might have a problem in the future, then that's a slippery slope we can go down. We can start talking about anything that could happen in the future. And maybe we should start passing ordinances every time we have a meeting. And I just don't think that's what we should be doing. So those are the reasons I object to this, and I just wanted to state that.
Councilman Hypes.
In rebuttal to my good friend, Councilman Will, the Right Honorable Councilman Will, I've attended very few meetings in the last 6 years that were as full in this room as there were when all of council was invited to hear from the residents about their feelings on short-term rentals. This place was full. Everybody in here spoke. It was about evenly divided. Some folks did show up to hear the concerns of our residents, and it affects not only those people who are wanting to do short-term rentals, but it affects the people who are in the immediate vicinity of short-term rentals. I, for one, and I know some other people in this room who live in a townhome, and you know, if I'm next to a party that's spilling outside the front steps of the townhome next to me because it's permitted to be a short-term rental, and the HOA can't get 2/3 or 3/4 of the people to make a change to the covenants, I want to listen and hear what our residents have to say. I'll reserve judgment on what's brought forward, and I'll make a decision once something is drafted and brought forward and we have further opportunity for public input. But I would respectfully disagree with my fellow council member that people did not feel strongly about this and come to their city and ask for some sort of redress.
Mayor Pro Tem Markham.
Thank you, sir. Playing off a little bit of that, too, and I know where Brian's coming from, I get it. But having been on council for quite a while, one of the hardest things to do is fix something that becomes a problem, especially if you have the opportunity or knew you had the opportunity to cut it off before it got there. I don't think that the basis of this, in comparable to Mr. Councilman Hype said, once I see it all put together, I can make a better decision. But I don't see this as being that encumbersome for somebody who's trying to run a business that may be renting houses, maybe renting their own houses. That's commerce, but we want to make sure it doesn't become the party house. If you, I promise you, if you didn't think this was a big deal and then all of a sudden your next door house became the bachelorette party weekend house, you would lose your mind and good chance there's nothing you could do about it. And then what are you going to do? Try to sell your house? Word gets around. You really have it. So we're looking out for the best interest of a lot of the people in the city that don't know this is going on. I hate to say it, but I'm in a 185 home subdivision. We had a summer party Saturday night, and I'm amused a little bit at some of the questions I get. I'm like, you guys really don't know what's going on in your own city. But they don't, because it's going so well. They don't see problems except for traffic, and I get to explain how Detroit would love to have our traffic. But as far as not a problem, and I've seen that before, Councilman Will, I've sat up here and said exactly that for another issue that I won't bring up, and here we are 4 years later, and that one's still not a problem. This one, I think, has potential. This is the direction it's going in. The big push now is build to rent, BTRs, the hot button for real estate, commercial real estate. And as far as the HOAs can't get the votes, you're partially correct. Our HOA was trying to address it. It wasn't that we couldn't get enough votes to add it to our covenants. We couldn't get enough votes to make it a legal vote. We had to get 67% or some weird number, and only 48% of the residents would vote. And we did a door-to-door campaign. So I don't think anybody that I'm aware of is trying to use us to fix a little problem that they have in their neighborhood. I think this is citywide. That's a big map we looked at. The quality of life that this city has right now is amazing. And the big push right now is rentals, build to rent or rent what you've got, short-term, long-term, however you see fit. But I applaud Kathy and the gang for working on this. Thank you.
Councilman DeRita.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to add from Councilman Will's comments and just interject some perspective from my end anyway. As Councilman Hypes mentioned, I did attend that meeting. It was very well attended. A lot of great input from both sides of the issue. But I think the biggest, I would say, consistent message that came from both sides of the argument, if I can call it an argument, it was just a very civil debate or discussion, was both sides wanted to retain the quality of life, as Mayor Pro Tem Merkel just alluded to, in the city of Alpharetta, and what needs to be done to make sure we maintain that quality of life in our city. If we allow short-term rentals, I do think that we have to have some sense of city parameters or city oversight, city ordinance, licensing ordinance to control it. This is almost, I'll call it like a national epidemic. If you look around the country and you read articles around the country, short-term rentals are becoming more and more a thing. It's a growing popularity because people are, maybe because a lot of people are moving to different states or what have you, or what's causing the migration all over the place, but there's not enough housing out there to kind of, people, or they're in the process of identifying a home and they have to get out of their house or whatever. And yeah, there's the vacation short-term rentals, of course, near the beach areas and things, which Alpharetta is not. So I do think that if we're going to do this, that it is incumbent upon the city to make sure that we administer a consistent policy. If at minimum, it allows our code enforcement and or police officers to enforce the ordinance when need be. I was here on the council my first go around back early, a while back, probably the oldest sitting council member up here. But we talked about curfews for teenagers. And the reason why, it was Chief George at the time, those of you who remember him, who put it forth for our consideration. And it was not that they were going to go out and round up teenagers at 10 o'clock at night and all that stuff. But it gave them the ability to enforce rounding up teenagers who were causing trouble, getting into potential criminal activity, causing problems, whatever. They didn't have that tool in their toolkit until we passed that ordinance. So, and so this is kind of similar. I don't think we're going to go out there with armies of people to check on every home short-term rental, or but HOAs who see issues in their communities and stuff can reach out to the city and say, hey, we have an issue here with people either illegally renting or what have you, or too many parties and that sort of thing. And I do think it gives us a tool to at least, mandate the proper use of these short-term rentals in our communities, ultimately with the goal of retaining the level of quality of life that we all look for in Alpharetta.
Any other discussion? I'll just add my 2 cents in. It hadn't changed since the first time we took up the topic. From my point of view, we don't have a tremendous issue yet, but the principle of the matter to me has always been, these are commercial properties in neighborhoods that are zoned for residents. And so we don't allow that without some kind of regulation. I don't think what we're proposing here is onerous. If you're running a commercial business between 6, homes on a cul-de-sac in a residential area that's zoned that way, I don't think it's onerous to ask you to follow permitting process, to provide certain standards and rules, and have contact information available. So if one of those renters happens to decide to have a crazy keg party and start shooting off fireworks at 4 in the morning, that at least we know who to contact. And so I have no issue with this at all. It's not like we're reinventing something that's never been an issue. Cities all around us, counties all around us have waited until it was too late and found themselves in an issue. So I think we're just getting ahead of it, and we're making it a productive discussion at this point. I don't see anything wrong with what we're proposing here. I think it's in the best interest of the people who want to operate well and the people who want to live in neighborhoods that are protected from being overwhelmed by vague, whatever you want to call it, migrants or, day-to-day renters. So that's where I come from. I think what we're doing is probably the best path, and look forward to getting something on paper and getting it done. Any other discussion? Okay, there is no vote, so we'll move on then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Ms. Eswine. So next item on our agenda is the public hearing portion, and Ms. Eswine is going to announce public hearing procedures.
An individual requesting to be heard on a matter related to the purpose of the hearing must be recognized by the mayor before addressing the city council. Upon rising to speak, the speaker must identify himself or herself and furnish a home or business address before proceeding with any comments or remarks. The council will allow the proponents a total of 10 minutes to speak in support of an application. Opponents will be allowed 10 minutes to speak in opposition. Comments are accepted first from the applicant, followed by persons speaking in favor, and then from those in opposition. Upon conclusion of any opposing comments or presentations, the mayor will allow the applicant to offer rebuttal time, if any is remaining, in the originally allotted 10 minutes.
Thank you, ma'am. So with that being said, the first item up under public hearing is CU-24-09, Wills Park Vet. Mr. Woodman, I believe you have the floor on this item.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The first item before you is a request for conditional use to allow an animal hospital for Wills Park Vet in a 3,600 square foot suite within a shopping center in downtown. Have the location map on the overhead. The property is located at 11770 Haynesbridge Road. It's suite 703 and 704, and this is the Alpharetta Crossings Shopping Center. That property is Zone C2, General Commercial. Property is about 10 acres. It was developed as a 100,000 square foot retail shopping center There are a variety of businesses operating in the center currently, including Urban Hardware, Bagel Boys, UPS store. And this is just a street view of the storefront, existing storefront, so it would go into these two suites here. And this is the site plan showing the development, so it is up on this end of the shopping center. And then this exhibit shows a pet relief area at the rear of the shopping center, and I'll discuss that in just a moment. So the business is Wills Park Vet. They're a new general practice veterinary clinic providing services to small animals such as dogs and cats. They will not provide boarding services. Overnight stays will only be limited to the pets that are being observed after surgery or treatment. Hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and some Saturdays within that same time frame. Applicant estimates 6 to 7 employees. Applicant does propose noise attenuation measures within the proposed suite. And then a pet waste station, it will be located near the storefront. That will be maintained by the animal hospital staff. They'll also maintain the pet relief area that is located at the rear of the center. That area will be available to both staff as well as their customers. Looking at the conditional use review criteria, we found that the proposed use would be compatible with surrounding retail uses and other locations for this business, which are typically found in commercial corridors. The nearest animal hospital is located 0.14 miles to the north at Country Place Animal Hospital. And the applicant did provide a citizen participation plan indicating that they received 6 emails from the public. 5 of those were in support of the request, and 1 was just had a question whether or not they would have any outdoor boarding. And the applicant did respond that they would not have any boarding at all. Showed this request to the public at the July 10th Community Zoning Information Meeting, and there was 1 comment in support. And then the request was considered by Planning Commission at their August 1st meeting. There were no, actually there was, I indicated in the staff report that there were no public comments. There actually was 1 public comment in support of the Wills Park Vet. And Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval, subject to staff conditions. And those conditions, there are 7 conditions identified in the staff report in your council packets. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Do we have any questions for Mr. Woodman? Well done, sir. Thank you very much. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Hey, I'm Dr. Drew Keller, and I'll be the owner-operator of Wills Park Vet. My address is 3550 Valleyway Road, and it's Cumming, Georgia is my home address. It will be a new animal hospital, but I'm an old veterinarian. I've been in this area for 20 years and have been practicing around here and have a great clientele, and I'm looking forward to coming home and serving my clients that I've served for so many years. So be happy to answer any questions if you guys have them.
Any questions for the applicant? Councilman Will.
Not really a question, but coincidentally, that's my old restaurant space, so I'm glad to see somebody going in.
Locos?
Councilman Mitchell.
It's more of a comment. Will you continue to offer painting with alcohol or no? I'm joking. My neighbor, I would have to come off council if I voted against this tonight. Mary Farr considers you, yeah, she considers you the best vet around. So,
yeah, I love Mary.
So good luck.
Thank you.
Councilman Dorito.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Keller, what do you practice in Covington?
No, right now I'm in Dawsonville. I practiced in Alpharetta for
I have
decades.
to tell you, this is more of a comment than, because we have 4 dogs, 2 cats. My wife will have more of her letter. We're constantly at the vet. And I don't know if it's just us, but the vets in this area always seem so busy.
They are.
Like, they are so busy. there's such a need, probably, a growing need in the area, and it's just, it's amazing to see the growth of people with pets around here. It's
Oh, yeah.
crazy.
This place has gone crazy in the last 25 years.
Well, we should continue to look.
Yeah, thanks, sir.
Any other questions for the applicant? Thanks, sir.
Thanks, guy.
Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward and speak on this item, now is your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, in honor of National Dog Day today, I will vote, my vote here to approve CU-24-09 Wills Park Vet as presented before us this evening.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel and a second by Councilman Heitz. Any discussion, gentlemen? All those in favor of the motion to approve as outlined by Mayor Pro Tem, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously. Congratulations. So the next item up, public hearing in the same property center, is CU-24-11 Salons by JC Alpharetta Crossings. Mr. Whitman, once again, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next request is a request from Salons by JC. They're requesting a conditional use to operate spa services in an 8,640 square foot suite in the Alpharetta Crossing Shopping Center, same location as the last request. I have the location map here. Again, property is located at 11770 Haynesbridge Road. This is Suite 401 at the southwest corner of Haynesbridge and Old Milton Parkway. Again, the property is Zone C2 General Commercial. Gave you the details of the shopping center previously. Salons by JC leases suites to cosmetologists, hairstylists, and other similar personal service providers. They've got 48 rooms within their location, and they've been operating at Alpharetta Crossing Shopping Center since it opened. The hours of operation of this business are Monday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the applicant is looking to allow waxing and massage services within this business. Looking at the conditional use review criteria, we found that the proposed retail service use would complement the beauty services offered at the applicant's business, as well as other commercial uses within that same shopping center. Looked at the nearest business approved for spa services, because the definition does have a 2,000-foot distance requirement. And we found that Natural Body Spa here at City Center is located approximately 2,300 feet away from the applicant's site. So they are not within 2,000 feet of another spa service business. The applicant provided a citizen participation plan, and they provided 16 letters of support for their request. And they showed their request to the public at the July 10th Community Zoning Information Meeting. There were no public comments at that meeting. And then Planning Commission considered the request at their August 1st meeting. There were no public comments, and Planning Commission recommended unanimous approval, subject to the 5 conditions in the staff reports in your council packets. And that concludes the presentation. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any questions for Mr. Woodman on this item? Thank you, sir. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
My name is Marcy Saran. My address is 2041 Wheaton Way, Sandy Springs, Georgia, 30328. I'm Marcy Saran, and my partner and I we do commercial real estate, and we are entrepreneurs, and we both have experience in tenant rental as well as marketing as well as a beauty business. We bought the business from a proprietor who owned and built Salons by JC 10 years ago almost. When we bought it, there's 48 suites in there, which I'd like to explain what a salon suite business is to you all. But there were 48 suites, and since then we've already rented 7 in 7 months. What has happened in the beauty business, what used to happen was you went to the barber or you went to get your hair done, and your professional rented a chair from the salon. When they rented a chair from the salon, the owner made the money, and they split the spread, and so that professional could not make money on product, nor were they running their own business. Since COVID, a lot has changed, mostly because people were shut down for that year. So what's happened is beauty professionals, whether estheticians, manicurists, hairstylists, massage folks, people offering spa services like eyebrow waxing, have gone out on their own, and they're renting individual suites, and they're paying by the week, and then they're bringing their own book of business, and they're making more money, and they're allowed to sell their own product. They're having an opportunity to upsell, to create margin, and to really enjoy the opportunities that entrepreneurship comes with. So what we're asking for is the opportunity for spa services, a conditional use permit, because everyone is going to these places, and whether it's the professionals looking for space and wanting to offer massage or waxing or hair, or whether it's the people coming in the door in our downtown Alpharetta location looking for that, and we don't offer it. So we're trying to grow the community, grow the business. And the other thing I wanted to share is that the people that are in there are all licensed. They're very serious about their business. Some of them have been there 7, 8, 9 years, and they're not able to collaborate because they don't have all the professionals that they're able to bring in. So that's what we're looking for.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Councilman Mitchell?
Thank you for your explanation there. What assurances can you give us that you will make sure that the masseuses are licensed, and do you keep that on file before you rent?
I do.
How does that work?
Yeah, and I want their credentials. I need a copy of their license. I also look them up on whatever their board is, whether it's the cosmetology board or the esthetician's board, who also have to be under oversight from a physician if they're an esthetician. So what I'm doing is keeping up with their licensing, as well as making sure they have liability insurance. I'm actually handing them a policy and saying you need to have liability insurance, and managing them as we go.
So you also check the Secretary of State's website and keep that current?
Yep. I mean, I can, I see that your license may be, coming up due. And there was a recent problem with the cosmetology board. Apparently they had a computer crash, and they kept extending the deadline, and then their site kept crashing. So it's back up now, so I'm even managing that as tenants.
Super, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank y'all.
Any other questions for the applicant? Well, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Shapiro?
We have no public comment cards, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward, now is your chance. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion this evening to approve CU-24-11 Salons by JC Alpharetta Crossings as presented this evening by Mr. Woodman.
Second.
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel, second by Councilman Mitchell. Any discussion? I'll just note for the record that, one, my wife will not let me vote no because she's been going to Sheila's for a long, long time. And she's been very happy with the service there. But I do want to make sure that we're all clear. Absolutely. She's probably paid a big chunk of those rents that you're receiving.
I have a bunch of new friends over there. They're very nice
Good. Well, I just want to reiterate, though, that there's a reason we're very sensitive in a municipal government about spa services. And you're a reputable owner and operator, and I have no concerns, but that's why we're sensitive to that, and we'll hold you to it. Continue to do a great job. That being said, all those in favor of the motion to approve as outlined by Mayor Pro Tem, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously. Congratulations. So, next item is the charter amendment for the mayor and council member salary. First reading, Ms. Eswine, would you please read the ordinance aloud?
An ordinance to amend the Alpharetta City Charter to increase the annual salary of the mayor, to increase the annual salary of the members of the city council, to provide for the annual adjustment of the salaries of the mayor and members of the city council, to include the provision of insurance, retirement, workers' compensation, and other employee benefits to the mayor and members of the city council, to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes.
Mr. Lagerbloom?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Really quick presentation tonight because this is pretty straightforward. In your current charter, it does contemplate the compensation for the mayor at $30,000 and the council member at $15,000. This is something that hasn't changed in our charter for multiple decades. We talked about this at our retreat, and we do have the power through our home rule ability to look at that and to make those numbers different. What's proposed for you tonight is to move the salary of the mayor to $50,000, council member to $25,000, and the state statute requires that if approved, it would only go into effect after the next election. So if you approve this over the course of its process, this is the first step in the process, it would kick in on January 1st of 2026. And this does nothing more or less than that. That's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem?
Chris, isn't there an annual increase with the cost of living with that?
There is. There's a formula by which it addresses what you do for the balance of the city's employees, and then it has sort of guardrails there that if it wouldn't at any time be anything more than what was done for the general city employee. That's correct.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Lagerbloom? Thanks, sir. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if anyone would like to come forward, now is your chance to do so. Please.
Good evening, one and all. It's John Courtney at 120 Woodfield Lane, Alpharetta, Georgia. My question is, I understand the ordinance, and I understand that you guys do deserve a pay raise. I would like to know the overall effect on the budget in terms of not only the pay, but also the benefits, because the benefits will rise as well as the pay, and I understand the 3% limit, but benefits seem to be a very costly item, and particularly for part-time work, it becomes full-time benefits. So just curious as to what those numbers are. I haven't seen them anywhere, so that's my issue.
Thank you, sir. I'll see if I can get you an answer to that. Mr. Lagerbloom or Director Harris, do either of you?
I'm going to have to, I could look it up and tell you, but if Mr. Harris is quicker than I am, which he usually is with these numbers, we'll let him take the response.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The actual, from the salary perspective, it's $80,000 a year is that increase because it's $20,000 for the mayor and then $10,000 for each of the council members. It turns out to be $80,000 if my math is correct.
It better be.
As far as the benefits, there's no change. The biggest benefit we have is probably medical insurance. This does not, your salary growth does not impact the medical insurance. There is with that 80,000 that could then grow by a maximum of 3% per year. The other impact would be our match of the 10%. So there would be another $8,000 related to the 401 contribution that the city makes on your behalf, and then there would be a slight another if you put in 5%, we match 5% in your 401 as well. So that 80,000 would be, that additional 80,000 would apply to that 5%. So I can't do all the math in my head, but I still think you're under, in the early years, you're under 100,000. So, or 100,000 maybe.
Thank you, sir. And if you don't mind, just let's go ahead and figure that out and get a document that it outlines those costs for the public. Okay?
Yep.
Any other questions for you? All right. Well, if there's no other public to come forward, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Is there any ordinance or anything to be read, or has that been read?
She did.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that council vote to approve the ordinance as referenced by the city attorney for the salary adjustments for council and for mayor as read in the ordinance.
Second. Have a motion by Councilman Heitz and a second by Councilman Will. Any discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to say so.
Councilman Heitz.
This did come up at the retreat, and I, for one, strongly support this change. The last salary adjustment, according to the code, was in 2004. That's pre-Facebook, pre-YouTube, pre-iPhone. That was a different world. And I, for one, am very happy for our other 450 full-time employees who have received raises along the way, but I have had a front row seat to council members who were friends of mine before I came on to council, to mayors sitting next to me and who I work with, and the time commitment, it's one heck of a full part-time job. What happens in here is the least of the time commitments that my fellow council members and certainly the mayors put into this. In 2004, the $15,000 that was approved back then using the Bureau of Labor Statistics would today be $25,476. So with this approval going into effect on January 1, 2026, we are voting for something less than parity in 2004. I had it up on the phone a moment ago. I think the $30,000 for the mayor translates into 51,000, almost, yeah, 51 to 52,000. So again, we're voting for something then that was less than parity in 2004. I want to get this on the record. If you want to serve your community, if you want to put the time in and be passionate about things to work for your community, to run for a lowly city council position, if it's contested, you can have $30,000 to $45,000 worth of campaigning for a job that had to have been paying $15,000. And if you're running for mayor in a contested position, you could be looking at putting $50,000 to $75,000 into a campaign for a job that pays $30,000. Some people may question our sanity, or certainly our smarts and our wisdom for wanting to do such a thing. So my position has been and remains that we should never be occupying these seats up here for the money, but we should never, ever dissuade people who have daytime jobs from wanting to serve their city because they can't make sense out of it. So I'm very, very supportive of this. It's long overdue, and I'm grateful for the city bringing it forward so we have the opportunity to vote on it.
Any other discussion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Councilman Hypes, as well said. I've also known so many of the councilmen over the years that are self-employed, and so it's not even so much about the raise, it's about what you give up at your day job. I know Councilman Hypes and I and several other people up here are full commissioned or self-employed, full commissioned, if you will. So a lot of time does go into this, and I appreciate you bringing this up because I think it will, as you said, help people in the future, and the numbers to run an election versus what you would get paid. I mean, literally could wipe out the entire first 3 years' salary. It'd take all four once you take taxes out. So you would basically, Mr. Business down here shaking his head, I appreciate that. Yeah, spend more than I make. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll just note, much like what they've said, I've been pretty ambivalent over the years. You know, I remember when I first got passionate about running for city council, and it certainly wasn't motivated by money. Quite frankly, I didn't even know city council members got paid when I chose to run. It was a matter of principle. And when I found out they got paid, I was like, oh, great, that might cover my election expenses. But the reason I do support this now is, one, it's not so much that we ever want to create an incentive for people to run for the money. That's not good for a city's future. If it's just people wanting to run, whether it's 25 or 15 or whatever, that's not what you want to do. I've come to see that, as they talked about, the cost of running campaigns nowadays, I think we're creating a disincentive for good people to do it. It's like, why would I risk $35,000 in a contested race and get half of that a year? You know, it takes me 2 years of working my tail off for a city council race just to pay back my loans. I mean, so that's why it is. I think I've only got 3 more years as the mayor here. Won't plan on having any more elections in this city, but I'm trying to leave this city in a better place than I found it. And I think setting up this future council and future mayors for success is a good step in the right direction. So that's why I support it. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. It does pass unanimously. So that'll wrap up the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting. We'll move on to new business. First item under new business is the request for qualifications, 24-1003, Comprehensive Energy Conservation Program. Director Sasevich, enlighten us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. 489 is the energy conservation project that we've been working on with the Finance Department. It also has a part of the FY25 budget, the facility assessment. So they're two combined. We didn't get to that point at first. We went out for an RFQ through the state process. We interviewed 2 vendors, Siemens and McKinstry. McKinstry was the highest rated vendor at the end, and then we started discussing our facility assessment with them. And the way they do their process is they're going to do what's called an investment grade audit of our existing facilities. They're going to look at our energy bills through Georgia Power. They're going to look at our HVAC systems. And at the same time they're doing that, they're able to, for all purposes, kill 2 birds with 1 stone. They're able to then go out and inspect our systems as well to do an assessment of our buildings, our lights, our HVAC system, our floors, countertops, cabinets. And these are all our buildings. The only ones that are not being looked at are our pavilions. So like the Lions Club Pavilion over at Wills Park. But they'll look at all the fire stations, public safety headquarters, the ATC, this building, Public Works, and go through the process. What gets interesting with this project is the investment grade audit side. There's a fee to that. And that fee, if we move forward, at the end of the audit, we will receive a report. Excuse me. That report will give us a benefit. If we move forward with an initiative, let's say change every light bulb to LED, we could spend X amount of dollars, save Y amount of dollars, and those costs can go, of the investment grade audit, can go towards that project. If we elect not to move forward with it, we pay for the audit, we pay for the assessment, and we say thank you, and we move on. It is talking to McKinstry, and a representative from McKinstry is here if there's some specific questions, but they wouldn't be going through this process if they didn't know there was savings to be found in our facilities. Our systems are older, there's no doubt about it. Plenty of HVAC systems 20 plus years old, and the lighting systems are different. So we know there's some benefits there. So we're looking at this about probably about a 2 to 3 month process. For sure, get a report back in front of Mayor and Council at the end of the year, or for the, the retreat. So it is a joint venture project with Finance, Public Works, the consultant McKinstry, and staff within Public Works facilities, escorting these gentlemen around the buildings, looking at our systems. The best part about the facility assessment at the end, we'll have a blueprint. We'll have a game plan of what we need to do moving forward with our repairs, our maintenance items. How much should we be budgeting each year towards our facilities to keep things up and running? Right now, we have an Excel spreadsheet that we go through. We know when things need to be taken care of, but more it's like when it breaks, we fix it. But this will get us to a proactive environment, which we've been aiming for. So it's all within budget. Actually, it's under budget. So any questions for me or Tom or the McKinstry rep?
Councilman Will.
Pete, is this an overall facilities assessment, or is this just an energy assessment?
It's overall, what it's not included in the assessment is there enough space to perform XYZ function? We're not doing the architectural space planning, but we're looking at everything within the building, the roof.
So we're looking at this building's 50 years old, has a 60-year lifespan. We should have allocated money for replacement. Is that what we're talking about here?
Basically, yes, yeah. When to fix things, when, if we have 20 years in our HVAC system right now, we probably got 2 or 3 more years
So they're
left
going
of
to do
that.
all of our facilities for $189,000 and give us the roadmap on when stuff has to be corrected and how much money needs to be allocated towards it.
Correct.
So no more guesswork.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilman Dorito?
Hey, Pete, I know we spoke about this, I just want to get clarity on it. The savings, the energy savings, if there's energy savings identified, if we do X, Y, Z as a result of this study, the assessment, right? We could potentially end up not even paying this money, right? If we decide to have McKinstry I think it's step 2, or phase 2, where they actually benefit from the energy savings for a period of time. So it's paid that way versus us writing them a check. Is that
Correct.
option?
The one part that isn't is the facility assessment. That's a separate
Right. I'm
fee
talking about the
itself.
energy piece.
Yes.
Okay. So I don't know if anyone's clear on that, but we'll have the option of paying the 189 versus
a portion of it.
A portion of it. Correct. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Sisevich? Well done, sir. Anything you wanted to add, Mr. Lagerblum?
No, he did a great job.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Sounds like a win-win. Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
However, if our member of the public would like to come forward and speak, now's your opportunity. Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mayor. I move to award RFQ 24-1003 to McKinstry, Inc. for comprehensive energy conservation services and facility assessment services in the amount totaling $189,647 and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilman Dorito, a second by Councilman Brady. Any discussion, gentlemen? Councilman Will.
I'm so glad we're moving forward with this. I think this is a huge step forward for the city, so thanks for doing this for us.
Thank you.
I agree with Councilman Will. Sounds like several dittos. Job well done, Pete. We
Thank you.
appreciate you bringing this to us. It's much needed, but this is a great financially practical way to get it done, so thank you.
Yeah. Kudos to the finance department for finding the process.
Excellent. That's always fun. All right. Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please vote yes. Otherwise, vote accordingly. And it does pass unanimously. So now we'll move on to the fiscal year 2025 Task Order Funding Award on-call storm pipe cleaning services to Southern Hydrovac.
Southern Hydrovac has been our vendor for the last several years. They are under contract from 2020 based off of competitive procurement. This is a task order based off of the rates that they've been having since 2020. So we got 43 pipes to clean, or 40 storm pipes to clean, equivalent to about 3,500 linear feet. So hopefully we get done as soon as possible so there's no issues with the pipes in the future.
Before it rains again.
Yeah.
Any questions for Director Sisevich? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Shapiro?
We have no public comment cards, Mr. Mayor.
However, now's the chance for the public to come forward. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do I have a motion from council?
Yes, Mayor, I move to approve the award of funds in the amount not to exceed $200,000 to Southern Hydro VAC for on-call storm pipe cleaning services pursuant to the April 1st, 2020 on-call storm pipe cleaning contract by and between Southern Hydro VAC and the City of Alpharetta, and authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Dorito, second by Councilman Brady. Any discussion, gentlemen? All those in favor, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously as well.
Thank you, Mayor Council.
Thank you, Pete. We appreciate it. So the next item up will be the purchase approval of 10 Scott Air Packs X3 Pro Scuba SCBA for fire personnel. There's no U there, so.
Easy for you to say.
Director Robinson, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, we are asking for approval for the purchase of 10 Scott Air Packs SCBAs in the amount of $75,930. Basically, these are 10 replacement for some older models that we have that are no longer considered serviceable, and they will also be added to our new engines that are scheduled to arrive in October of 2025.
Questions for Director Robinson? Councilman Will.
Chief, can you, for the public's sake, explain what these things do?
It's the air pack. It's basically when you see a firefighter going into a fire, that big tank on their back.
So it's the big tank?
Yes. It helps them breathe. Very important.
That's important.
It's important. I would call that very important, yes.
Okay.
Especially in a fire.
Especially in a fire. We highly recommend wearing those, yes.
I just wanted people to understand what it was, that was all.
That's good. I probably should have explained that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Robinson? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have no public comment cards, sir.
And I see no public left, so we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion from council?
Yes, Mayor, I make a motion to approve the purchase of 10 Scott Air Packs X3 Pro SCBA units in the amount not to exceed $75,930.60. Authorize the mayor to execute all necessary documents.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Will and a second by Councilman Mitchell. Any discussion, gentlemen? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously. Next item is text amendments to the Code of the City of Alpharetta Alcohol Ordinance. This is the second reading, and Ms. Eswine will read the ordinance.
An ordinance by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend Chapter 4 of the Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend provisions regarding fees and administrative costs associated with an alcoholic beverage license, to amend procedures regarding review and approval of license applications and notice requirements, to provide for effective dates, to repeal ordinances in conflict herewith, and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. Ms. Shapiro?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This tonight is the second reading of an ordinance, just as Ms. Eswine described. Again, just as a reminder, this is to allow for a change in the alcohol ordinance of the city regarding fees, and that they would be set from time to time by mayor and city council by resolution, and then also to change the approval process to be an administrative approval by staff, and in certain situations, forward applications to the city council for approval. There's been no changes since the first reading, and if this is approved tonight, we had our last hearing at the staff level today, so you would approve those applications on September 9th. So that would be the last two applications before it would switch to that administrative approval process.
Excellent. Any questions for Ms. Shapiro? Since we have no public, I'm assuming we have no public comment cards.
We have none, sir.
Do we have a motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'd offer a motion this evening to approve the second reading of the text amendment code of the City of Alpharetta alcohol ordinance as was presented to us.
Second?
Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel and a second by Councilman Dorito. Any discussion? I'll just applaud both of you for making the process more efficient and making it easier on our small businesses. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please vote yes. And it is unanimous. So we'll move on to the text amendments for the City Code of the City of Alpharetta, legal organ. This is also the second reading. Ms. Eswine, could you please read the ordinance?
An ordinance by the Mayor and Council of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to amend Chapter 2 of the Code of the City of Alpharetta, Georgia, to designate the Alpharetta Roswell Herald as the official legal organ for the City of Alpharetta, to provide for effective dates, to repeal all ordinances in conflict herewith, and for other purposes.
Thank you very much. Once again, Ms. Shapiro.
Thank you, Mayor. This item, again, this is the second reading. There's been no changes to the ordinance since the first reading, and it's just to designate the Alpharetta Roswell Herald as the city's legal organ.
We have no public?
We have no public comment cards, sir.
All right. Do we have a motion from council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the text amendments of the City Code of Alpharetta under the legal organ as read and presented.
We have a motion by Councilman Brady. Do we have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Merkel? Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously as well. So we'll move on to the final item under this portion of the meeting is change order 24-106, artificial turf replacement contract. Mr. Lagerbloom.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This was a late addition to this agenda, earlier this afternoon. And the reason that we added it earlier this afternoon is because we have a project that's ongoing right now that you all approved in January. We went under contract to do a replacement of the Miracle League field surface, and that work has commenced. And in the process of removing the old surface, we discovered that what was underneath has aged and worn and was coming up with the removal of the surface that was going to be replaced. And so what's required for us to be able to put a new surface down is that we need to mill and resurface the entirety of the Miracle League field, and it needs to then, it's further complicated by the fact that that needs to cure for a period of 30 days before we can put the new surface down. So we've been working with the Miracle League. Likely if we move forward, and I'll describe prices here in a minute, if we move forward with this change order tonight, we may have a couple-week delay in the fall season of the Miracle League, to which they don't see to be much of an issue. If we had not brought this forward tonight, we could have put the season, basically the fall season, at risk of not being able to be played just by the time we could get back into the queue to get this work done. We worked with the current vendor as opposed to going out and getting 3 quotes of our own. We worked with that vendor to have one of their subcontractors who they do this with on a regular basis so that they are used to the base that they put down so that they can overlay it with the new material. They're used to doing that, and this would be the opportunity that we could continue to push forward and maybe miss a couple of weeks, but not miss the whole fall season. It's before you tonight because of the percentage increase that it would be in the change order. It's bigger than we can do anything administrative. It has to come to the City Council. Initially, when you awarded this contract, you awarded it for $483,800. That was awarded at the January 8th meeting. If you were to approve a change order tonight, the change order in total, and this is a worst-case scenario change order, is $116,250. Prior to bringing it to you tonight, I had our Public Works Director look at the cost of the asphalt and the cost of the mobilization and compare it to other contracts of similar type that we issue here in the city. The director can speak for himself, but what he would tell you is that this is in line with other unit pricing that we're seeing in this type of work, and that he felt as though the number was reasonable. I've got a couple, just to put a visual to it. This is what's happening actually to the underside of the field that is being chipped up. And if all that black wasn't here, we could use the base that the black is on. But with this, and it's come up in varying degrees of lifting just over the years. There's really no way to put a new surface that would be usable and be ADA accessible, which that's the whole purpose of this field, if we don't mill and resurface. So this would mill off about 1.5 inches, resurface, the product would sit there for 30 days to cure, and then we could put down the new surface. And we would look towards opening up the fall season of the Miracle League towards the end of October as opposed to, I think I have that right, correct? End of October, as opposed to the middle of October. So we really only lose a couple weeks. So if you all are so inclined to support that tonight, I would recommend that we take these funds from our unallocated capital funds. I don't want to impact the general fund with this project, but it would, as you all remember, we had a couple $1 million that we didn't allocate as we were building the budget in the capital projects fund. This is a perfect example of why we don't allocate every penny, because this presented itself with no idea that it was going to present itself until they started to take the old surface up. Even the company that bid on the work didn't have any idea that we would see this as we started to take up the old surface. So I'd ask and seek your approval tonight to move forward and let us move on with the Miracle League this fall as quick as we can get to them and not lose any more time. So I apologize for the late ad, but those are all the facts behind it.
Councilman Hypes?
I want to preface my remarks, Mr. Lagerbloom, that, I understand the urgency of it all. What are our procedures on advertising before we appropriate money to allow the public to know about something? I don't want to hold this up, but I don't want to cherry pick when we can properly advertise something and not. Does this require advertising in terms of the length of time it needs to be on an agenda before we can address it?
No, and I can defer to the city attorney, but I believe we have the authority, and I say I believe, we have the authority to alter or modify the agenda up until the meeting time itself, which is why we did it as quickly as we could. And, I toyed with the idea of just bringing it at the beginning of the meeting, but we thought every minute we got that we could actually advertise it was a better minute. So while short, I believe it's lawful.
Answers my question. Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Eswine?
No, for agenda purposes, the law doesn't require, it's as soon as possible, but the council and staff retain discretion to add to the agenda up until the meeting. And so since this was a late addition, it's not too late under the law.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Any other questions from council? Ms. Shapiro, do we have any public comment cards?
We do not, Mr. Mayor.
Seeing none, I'll close public comment. So, do we have a motion from council?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the change order 24-106, the artificial turf field replacement contract, with the change order in an amount not to exceed $116,250 from the unallocated fund in our city.
We have a motion by Councilman Mitchell, a second by Councilman Will. Any discussion?
I
Brady?
think we all hate change orders, so anytime this comes through, I guess we understand the special circumstances because it's got to be done. But the learning lesson is what exactly is happening in these artificial that could it happen again? Can we look into this so we initially go into it from a scope of work that's captured that the substrate might be deficient, and we understand that total negotiation up front that we're not having a 25% change order come back. That's all. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Well, I'll just say thank you, Mr. Lagerbloom, for bringing this to our attention. I mean, he did call and ask me if I thought this was appropriate, and I think under the circumstances, I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to go out to the Miracle League, but for the public who may not be aware, Miracle League is a special needs softball program, and it serves this entire area, and it's something very unique. It's not like one of the other softball fields or one of the other baseball fields or any of those grassed or turfed areas. It's specially built by the city of Alpharetta to accommodate wheelchairs and special needs residents. And so that's why I do believe it's critical. It's not like we really had any other options. It was either try to do it in this short time frame or those families who get not as much support as most families do. And so this is, I think, a valid use of this ability, and I appreciate council's support. And hopefully it won't happen again. I don't think that field's been replaced in about 20 years, if I remember right. So unfortunately, that's what happened. But thank you, and I appreciate council's support. All those in favor, please vote yes. And it does pass unanimously. And since we don't have any public, I don't see anyone coming forward, so we'll close public comment. Do we have any reports? Don't see any reports. Mr. Lagerbloom, do we need an executive session?
It's very, very quick, but we have two topics, 5 minutes or less. Personnel, real estate are the two topics, please. Thank you.
All right, sir. Do we have a motion to recess into executive?
Motion to recess to executive session.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilman Will, second by Dorito. All those in favor, please vote yes. And we will recess into executive session and return very shortly.
So the joke was, whenever the field wears out, the miracle will be raised. 20 years ago. That was the joke we were going to say.
I wonder what, I heard a comment. Do we have a motion to reconvene? Second. Have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem, second by Councilman Will. All those in favor of reconvening the city council meeting, please vote yes. And it is unanimous. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Councilman Will with the motion, Mayor Pro Tem with the second. All those in favor of adjourning this meeting, please vote yes. And it is unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Got some signatures needed over here.
Always.
Donald D. his.